side of him. I think he's still that same Steve. He's still that. But now you're also seeing another side of him that he never had to show.
Telling people you work with, I don't want you even to be next to me. Like, I have such disdain for you that I'm annoyed by your presence.
His TV talk show.
Okay, this was the one he had on NBC just recently.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay.
The one that, damn, who took his show from him?
Kelly Clarkson.
How can Kelly Clarkson take your show?
I heard you go on the air and you said, my sister done burnt too many bridges and there's nothing I can do for her now. Steve, do you know how hurt I was?
Steve Harvey didn't just climb to the top. He charged his way up, leaving more than a few people feeling stepped on. Behind that big smile and those clean-cut suits, the story isn't as shiny as it looks. For years, comedians whispered that Steve's road to fame wasn't all faith and hustle. It was lined with broken trust, borrowed material, and silent enemies who watched him rise while biting their tongues. Now the silence is cracking, and the laughter's turning cold. Comedians who once respected Steve are finally pulling back the curtain. And what they're revealing isn't the motivational king the world thinks they know. They're talking about the real Steve Harvey, the one behind the cameras, behind the fame, behind the fake smiles. Let's get into it. Steve Harvey, one of the biggest names in comedy and television history. The man went from broke stand-up gigs to hosting Family Feud, Miss Universe, The Steve Harvey Show, and even preaching life lessons like a Sunday pastor. He's on radio, books, podcasts, and screens worldwide. He turned himself into a billion-dollar brand, a walking symbol of hard work and faith paying off. But not everyone's clapping for that story anymore. Some of the same people who once laughed beside him now say the Steve Harvey you see on TV ain't the same man who was grinding in the clubs back in the day. Behind the laughter was a hustler who played the game, and maybe bent the rules too. Let's rewind the clock to the late 80s and early 90s. The golden era of black stand-up comedy. Picture it. Small clubs packed tight, smoky air, the mic buzzing, and a young Steve Harvey hungry for his shot. He was sharp, smooth, and relentless, but so were hundreds of others. Mark Curry, D.L. Hewley, Cat Williams, Monique, Cedric the Entertainer, Bernie Mac, all hustling for laughs, all paying dues, all respecting the code. And that code? Simple. You never, ever steal another comedian's material. That's the one rule that keeps the comedy world sacred. But that's exactly where the cloud over Steve's name started to form. The whispers weren't just from one person. They came from everywhere. Comedians saying their material mysteriously showed up on TV. Word for word, one of the first people to call him out was Mark Curry, the star of Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Mark didn't bite his tongue. He said it straight. Steve Harvey stole his routine. According to him, jokes and setups he wrote ended up on the Steve Harvey Show like they were original. Mark claimed he watched scenes that were his work, repackaged with Steve's smile. That wasn't just shade, that was a direct hit. Because in comedy, stealing jokes isn't inspiration, it's robbery. Mark said, he took jokes I wrote, put them on TV, and acted like he made them up. He even claimed he saw it happen with his own eyes. And for the first time, people started to listen. The man who made millions laugh might have built part of his success on someone else's punchlines. But trust, this was just the beginning. The more Steve's name grew, the louder the accusations got. When Mark Curry spoke, the comedy world shook because for years, no one had dared to say it out loud, that the clean-cut, smiling Steve Harvey might have been out here lifting other people's work. Mark had nothing to lose and everything to say. He claimed he saw it with his own eyes. Scenes, punchlines, setups, all matching material he'd written long before the Steve Harvey Show ever hit TV. Mark wasn't whispering, he was shouting it. Steve Harvey stole my whole routine, he said. He took jokes I wrote, put them on TV, and acted like he made them up. Those were fighting words in the comedy game, because stealing jokes, that's the ultimate betrayal. You can bomb on stage, you can miss a gig, but you never steal a fellow comic's act. That's sacred ground. But when Mark called him out back in the day, nobody wanted to hear it. Steve was already becoming a household name, the suits, the mustache, the charm. He wasn't just another comedian anymore. He was a brand, and Hollywood protects its brands. So while Mark's words echoed through small circles, the big platform stayed quiet. Still, the whispers grew louder. Over the years, smaller comedians, openers, writers, even club regulars told similar stories. They said Steve would hear a great joke, tweak it, polish it, and then boom, next thing you know, he's telling it on national TV like it was his. It became a pattern too obvious to ignore. Then came Cat Williams. And Cat didn't just throw shade, he set the whole forest on fire. In a now infamous interview, Cat called Steve out directly. He said, "Steve Harvey ain't the king of comedy, he's the king of stealing jokes." That line went viral before viral was even a thing. Cat claims Steve built his career on Bernie Mac's back, and that cut deep, because that wasn't just about jokes. That was about loyalty, legacy, and respect. See, Steve Harvey, Bernie Mac, Cedric the Entertainer, and D.L. Hewley were supposed to be brothers. They were the original kings of comedy, 4 men representing unity and power in the game. But after Bernie Mac's tragic death, things took a dark turn. Rumors spread that Steve used Bernie's passing as a chance to take the crown, to slide into that top spot and claim it all for himself. Fans started saying Bernie was the people's champ, the real heart of the kings, while Steve was the TV champ, polished for Hollywood. And then people started digging. Old interviews started resurfacing. That time, Steve went on Oprah and talked about Bernie's success with a strange mix of praise and envy. Or when he told D.L. Hewley, "Some people ain't meant to be stars like me." Now with Cat and Mark Curry both speaking out, people began to connect the dots. The same pattern, stolen material, shady moves, silent competitors, it all started to make sense. And what made it worse? Nobody could deny that Steve kept winning, no matter what storm came his way. But in the back rooms of comedy clubs and behind closed doors, people were talking. They said the smile was fake, the charm was calculated, and the rise to fame wasn't built on talent alone, it was built on other people's grind. By the early 2000s, the original kings of comedy had turned these 4 brothers, Steve Harvey, Bernie Mac, Cedric the Entertainer, and D.L. Hewley, into icons. They weren't just comedians anymore, they were legends. The tour was electric, the movie was historic, and fans believed they were witnessing true brotherhood. But what looked like unity on stage was hiding a lot of tension backstage. And that's where the story starts to break. See, after Bernie Mac passed away, the whole dynamic changed. The laughter stopped and the whispers started. People said Steve Harvey didn't just mourn Bernie, he moved in on his legacy. It wasn't just jealousy, it was competition. Cat Williams wasn't wrong when he said Steve built his career on Bernie's back. That line hit hard because deep down, people felt it. Bernie was raw, the people's champ. His comedy came from pain, honesty, and grit. Steve was polished, Hollywood's favorite, the safe face they could sell. The difference between them was soul. And that's why when Bernie died, fans couldn't help noticing how quickly Steve stepped into that solo spotlight, acting like the crown was always his. Then came the interviews, the clips that resurfaced years later and made everyone raise an eyebrow. On Oprah, Steve spoke about Bernie's success with this strange edge in his voice, like he couldn't quite hide how much it burned him. And when he once told D.L. Hewley, "Some people ain't meant to be stars like me," it hit different, because people remembered those some people were the same ones who helped him climb. Even D.L. Hewley, one of Steve's closest friends, had his own take on it. On a recent podcast, he said, "Steve knows how to survive in any room, but that don't mean everybody likes the way he do it." That line said everything, because survival in Hollywood isn't just about talent, it's about playing the game. And Steve Harvey, he learned to play it better than anyone. But in that same breath, people began to wonder, at what cost? Some comics who came up with him said Steve was two-faced, one man for the streets, another for the suits. He'd laugh with you one day, then sit with your agent the next, pitching your ideas as his own. That's not loyalty, that's strategy. That's how you go from telling jokes in smoky clubs to running primetime TV shows. And that's exactly why so many comedians say his friendships faded as his fame grew. The bigger he got, the smaller his circle became. Not because he cut them off for success, but because they didn't trust him anymore. Steve was no longer one of the guys. He was Hollywood's golden boy. Charming, sharp, unstoppable. But in the eyes of his peers, he had traded brotherhood for business. Still, while his old crew whispered and the streets talked, Steve stayed smiling on camera, acting like nothing could touch him. But behind the laughter, the foundation was shaking. The brotherhood that built the kings of comedy was falling apart, and everyone knew it. When Monique spoke out about being blackballed in Hollywood, she shook the whole entertainment world. But no one expected Steve Harvey to be the one to go against her. What started as a sister standing up for her worth turned into one of the most shocking fallouts in comedy history, all live on national television. Monique said she wasn't being treated fairly. She said she was standing on integrity and not bending for Hollywood politics. And she thought her brother in comedy, Steve Harvey, would have her back. But when she went on his talk show, the moment that followed broke fans' hearts and exposed a whole different side of Steve. Right there, face to face, Steve told her, "You can't sacrifice money for integrity. This is the money game." That line hit like a punch to the gut. Because for years, Steve had preached about faith, morals, and standing on principle. Yet now, in front of millions, he was saying money mattered more than integrity. Fans couldn't believe what they were hearing. Monique looked stunned, betrayed. This was supposed to be her brother in the business, a man who understood what it meant to fight from the bottom. Instead, he sounded like the very Hollywood machine she was fighting against. That clip went viral. People replayed it over and over, trying to understand how Steve, the man who talks about keeping your faith, could turn his back on someone who just wanted fairness. It wasn't just about disagreement, it was about values. For Monique, that moment was personal. She saw it as a betrayal, not from a rival, but from a friend. Someone who knew what it meant to be overlooked, underpaid, and disrespected. Yet instead of standing beside her, Steve stood behind the system that had shut her out. And that changed how fans saw him forever. People started asking tough questions. If Steve could switch up on Monique on live TV, who else had he turned on behind closed doors? If he could choose money over loyalty in public, what kind of choices was he making in private? And then, old interviews started resurfacing again. Moments where Steve admitted, "I've done things I ain't proud of, but when you hungry, you eat what's in front of you." At first, people took it as a metaphor, the kind of do what it takes story we hear from successful people all the time. But after Monique, after Mark Curry, after Cat Williams, that line hit differently. Because what if he meant it literally? What if eating what's in front of you meant taking whatever he needed to get ahead, even if it belonged to someone else? And the more people looked back, the clearer the pattern became. Every controversy, every broken bond, it always seemed to end with Steve walking away richer, cleaner, and more powerful, while the other person faded into the background. And to some, that's just survival. But to others, it's straight up betrayal. The Monique fallout didn't just hurt Steve's image, it cracked it wide open. The man who built a career on being everyone's favorite uncle suddenly looked like the kind of businessman who'd trade loyalty for a paycheck without blinking. For years, Steve Harvey looked untouchable. The shows, the suits, the books, every move he made turned to gold. But as the spotlight kept shining brighter, the shadows around him started to grow darker. The comedians he once came up with were no longer clapping. They were calling him out one by one, and this time, the world was finally listening. People started revisiting his old interviews, and the pattern was too clear to ignore. Steve's hunger didn't just look like ambition anymore. It looked like greed. Those who knew him before the fame said Steve was always that man who'd smile in your face, dap you up, laugh with you, and then walk straight into your agent's office the next day pitching your ideas. They said he didn't just want to make it, he wanted to win, no matter the cost. And that kind of hunger has consequences. As Steve's fame grew, his friendships started disappearing one by one. The same people who once toured with him now kept their distance. They said Steve didn't keep friends. He kept opportunities. Cold, right? But that's Hollywood for you. Even some of his old radio crew members spoke up. They said they felt used and replaced once he got bigger deals. He'd move on without a second thought, cutting ties like they never existed. To them, Steve's loyalty only lasted until the next paycheck. But the real turning point came when fans started noticing how his public image didn't match the stories behind the scenes. The same man preaching about faith and family had already been caught cheating in his personal life. The same man talking about loyalty was rumored to be making backdoor deals that left his old peers behind. It was like his whole brand was built on contradictions. And yet, through all the smoke, Steve kept winning. That's what made it so confusing. Every time a new controversy hit, he bounced back stronger. When critics dragged him, he smiled. When comedians called him out, he prayed. When fans doubted him, he dropped another book, another show, another viral clip about staying positive. It was almost like nothing stuck to him. Some said it was charm, others said it was strategy, but a few, especially in the comedy world, said it was something deeper. They claimed Steve understood the power of image better than anyone else in Hollywood. He once said, "If people believe you're blessed, they'll forget what you did to get there." And maybe that was his real superpower. Not the jokes, not the grind, but the illusion. Because no matter how many rumors hit, no matter who spoke against him, the world still saw Steve Harvey as the man who made it out of nothing. But behind the scenes, that illusion was cracking fast. More comedians were stepping forward, telling their stories, sharing their pain, and painting a picture that didn't look so holy. One by one, they started pulling the mask off the king of clean comedy, and what they revealed wasn't pretty. The higher you climb, the louder the whispers get. And for Steve Harvey, those whispers have turned into roars. Because after decades of fame, success, and motivation, the comedy world is finally asking, did Steve build his empire or borrow it from everyone else? Every few months, a new story surfaces, a new voice from the past, a new reminder that success doesn't erase history. From Bernie Mac's passing, to Monique's betrayal, to Cat Williams and Mark Curry calling him out, Steve's name always finds its way into the middle of the drama. And not just any drama, the kind that stains reputations forever. Some comedians say it straight. Steve was ruthless. Not evil, not heartless, just hungry. The kind of hungry that doesn't stop once it's full. They say he learned early that in Hollywood, being good ain't enough. You gotta be smart, political, and sometimes a little cold-blooded. Because let's be real, the funny ones don't always win. The strategic ones do. And Steve Harvey, he's one of the sharpest players comedy's ever seen. But with every move, there were casualties, friendships lost, trust broken, respect shattered. People who once stood beside him now look at him like a stranger. And still, he keeps smiling. That's the part that gets everyone. No matter what comes out, Steve stays unbothered. He's got Family Feud breaking ratings, books selling millions, and motivational clips going viral every week. It's like every scandal just bounces off him. But deep down, fans are starting to wonder, how long can someone outrun their own past? He once said, if people believe you're blessed, they'll forget what you did to get there. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's the secret that's kept Steve at the top all these years. But karma doesn't care about public image. It cares about receipts. And lately, those receipts are piling up. The more comedians talk, the clearer it gets. Behind the charm was a businessman who played the game to win, even if it meant leaving a few people behind in the process. Because this isn't just about stolen jokes anymore. It's about how fame changes a man. The Steve who once preached about faith and loyalty became the one Hollywood could rely on to keep it polished and professional, even if it meant silencing his own. So maybe Steve Harvey didn't steal jokes out of malice. Maybe he just learned the brutal truth about success. That nice guys don't finish first in Hollywood. The strategists do. But now, as the old stories resurface, the world's starting to see the cracks in the crown of comedy's king. And whether you love him or hate him, one thing's clear. Steve Harvey's story proves that fame isn't free. Every laugh, every deal, every blessing came with a cost. And now the bill's coming due. So what do you think? Did Steve climb the ladder through pure hustle? Or did he step on too many hands to get to the top? Either way, the silence around him is starting to speak louder than his jokes, and comedy's biggest smile might be facing its biggest reckoning yet. This is Street Fame Files, where fame meets truth and legends face the receipts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because we've got more Hollywood secrets coming your way. See you on the next one.